On February 1st, 1908, in broad daylight, in the heart of Lisbon's grandest square, a queen did something that would echo through history. As gunshots shattered the afternoon air and her husband collapsed beside her, mortally wounded, Queen Amélie of Portugal rose from her carriage. Around her neck gleamed the diamonds of her wedding necklace, a symbol of love and legitimacy, while in her hands was nothing but a simple bouquet of flowers, a delicate gift from a young girl just moments before. But in that instant of unthinkable terror, those fragile blooms became something extraordinary. She swung them at an armed assassin, crying, "Infames, infames, infamous ones," transforming a symbol of feminine grace into an act of fierce, maternal defiance. But this moment of breathtaking courage was just the climax of a story that began decades earlier, when a French princess born in exile would become Portugal's last queen, only to lose everything in a single, devastating minute. Today, we uncover the remarkable journey of Queen Amélie of Portugal, a woman whose life was defined by two great exiles, profound loss and extraordinary resilience. You'll discover how a childhood marked by displacement shaped her into one of Europe's most compassionate queens. We'll explore her pioneering work in public health that saved countless lives, and witness how years of mounting political tension culminated in one of history's most shocking royal assassinations. But most importantly, you'll see how, in her darkest moment, when faced with unimaginable violence, this remarkable woman found the courage to fight back with nothing but flowers, and in doing so, saved her youngest son's life and created one of the most powerful images of maternal bravery in royal history. This isn't just a story about jewels and crowns. It's about a woman who turned vulnerability into strength, who chose service over safety, and who, when everything she loved was under attack, discovered that sometimes the most delicate things can become the most powerful weapons of all. The princess born in exile. Our story begins not in a palace, but in a modest house in Twickenham, England, where on September 28, 1865, Marie-Amélie Louise Hélène d'Orléans entered the world already marked by displacement. She was born in the very room that had once welcomed Queen Anne of Great Britain, a poetic foreshadowing of a life destined for a throne, albeit a fragile one. Her father, Prince Louis Philippe, Count of Paris, was the rightful heir to the French throne, but the 1848 February Revolution had stripped his family of their kingdom. Little Amélie's childhood was spent in the shadow of this loss, constantly reminded that home was a place they could not return to. This early acquaintance with impermanence would prove to be both her greatest challenge and her most valuable preparation for the trials ahead. The young princess formed an unusually close bond with her father, sharing his love for nature and horses during long walks through the English countryside. These moments of connection were precious because her relationship with her mother, Princess Isabel, was far more strained. Historical records describe Princess Isabel as having a severe demeanor. She was known to slap her daughter in front of others for perceived impoliteness. This harsh treatment could have broken a lesser spirit, but instead it forged something remarkable in Amélie, a fierce determination to show the love and compassion she herself had not always received. A romance born of portraits. Amélie's path to queenship began with a story that reads like a fairy tale. After declining a proposal from a Bavarian prince, the Franco-German tensions from the 1870 war still ran too deep. She caught the attention of Prince Carlos of Portugal in the most romantic way imaginable. He saw her portrait on a mantelpiece and was so captivated that he travelled to Paris just to meet her. Within weeks, they were engaged. Their wedding on May 22, 1886, was a dazzling affair that showcased the union of two royal houses. Amélie appeared radiant in silk and pearls, but it was her choice of jewellery that spoke volumes about her character. Rather than wearing a grand tiara, she chose a delicate wreath of orange blossoms, a symbol of purity and new beginnings that reflected her hope for a fresh start away from the shadows of exile. The wedding gifts that surrounded her told their own story. The spectacular diamond scroll tiara that would become her signature piece as crown princess. But even this celebration carried the bitter taste of exile. The lavish reception in Paris drew such public attention that it sparked a Republican backlash. A new law was passed just 1 month later, once again banishing Améli's parents and their male heirs from France. The very event celebrating her new life as a Portuguese royal had precipitated another painful exile for her family. The Queen with a heart for service. When Amélie arrived in Portugal, she brought with her something the court had never seen before, a genuine desire to serve the people who would become her subjects. She quickly learned Portuguese and threw herself into charitable work with an intensity that surprised even her supporters. Often seen wearing her diamond scroll brooch, a constant reminder of her wedding vows and royal duties, she made this smaller piece her companion for the countless public engagements that defined her reign. But this wasn't the superficial charity work expected of royalty. Amélie rolled up her sleeves and got involved in ways that shocked the aristocracy. She founded hospitals, sanatoriums, pharmacies, soup kitchens, and nurseries. Her most significant contribution was her tireless campaign against tuberculosis, a disease that was ravaging Portugal's population. In 1899, she established the National Assistance for Tuberculosis, and remarkably, she even studied at a polytechnic college to earn a medical degree so she could better understand how to help her people. But here's what makes Amélie's story so compelling. Her genuine efforts to help were met with criticism from all sides. The traditional aristocracy viewed her personal visits to the poor as unfitting for a future queen. Meanwhile, the growing Republican movement, unable to attack her popular charitable work directly, instead called her a liar and a phony. Even a health voyage she took in 1902 was criticized by the press as excessive luxury. This reveals something profound about the impossible position Amélie found herself in. The monarchy had become so discredited that even genuine good deeds were interpreted as propaganda. She was damned if she helped and damned if she didn't, a woman trying to serve a nation that was increasingly determined to reject everything she represented. The gathering storm. As Amélie worked tirelessly to improve the lives of her people, the political situation around her was deteriorating rapidly. Portugal was facing chronic economic crises. The country had defaulted on its debt twice in the 1890s. The 1890 British ultimatum, which forced Portugal to abandon its colonial aspirations in Africa, was seen as a national humiliation that fueled Republican sentiment. King Carlos I, Amélie's husband, was growing increasingly desperate. In 1906, he appointed João Franco to lead what was essentially a dictatorship, dissolving parliament and implementing authoritarian reforms. This move backfired spectacularly, uniting the monarchist parties with the Republicans in opposition to the crown. The atmosphere in Lisbon was becoming toxic. Republican leader Afonso Costa openly warned King Carlos in Parliament, referencing how the head of Louis XVI rolled off the scaffold in France. Bomb plots and street agitation were on the rise. Just 3 days before our story reaches its climax, a failed Republican coup had been attempted. And yet, on February 1, 1908, the royal family made a decision that would prove fatal. They would return to Lisbon in an open carriage, in broad daylight, with minimal security. The fateful journey. Picture this scene, a beautiful February afternoon in Lisbon. The royal family, King Carlos, Queen Amélie, Crown Prince Luís Filipe, and young Prince Manuel, had just returned from their residence at Vila Viçosa. Their journey involved a train ride, a boat crossing of the Tagus River, and finally, a ceremonial procession through the city in an open horse-drawn carriage. Queen Amélie had dressed carefully for this public appearance, wearing her beloved pearl and diamond necklace, one of her most treasured wedding gifts. The lustrous pearls caught the afternoon light as she waved to the crowds, a vision of royal elegance that belied the danger lurking in the shadows. As they entered the Praça do Comércio, Lisbon's grandest square, a young girl approached their carriage. In a moment of innocent ceremony, she presented Queen Amélie with a bouquet of fresh flowers, a simple gesture of welcome that would soon take on extraordinary significance. The square was filled with people, but the mood was tense. The failed coup attempt just days earlier should have been a warning, but the royal family proceeded with their traditional route. It was a tragic miscalculation born of outdated protocol and a failure to recognize the escalating danger. The moment that changed everything. At approximately 5:20 p.m., as the royal carriage rounded the eastern part of the square, the first shots rang out. Manuel, a former army sergeant and skilled marksman, emerged from the crowd and fired his Winchester rifle from just 8 meters away. The shot struck King Carlos in the neck, killing him instantly. Alfredo Luís da Costa, a 24-year-old clerk and member of the radical Carbonaria secret society, jumped onto the carriage step and fired additional shots into the king's body. Crown Prince Luís Filipe, the heir to the throne, stood up and drew his concealed revolver, managing to fire 4 shots at Costa before being fatally struck in the head by Buissa's rifle. And then came the moment that would define Queen Amélie forever. When flowers became a weapon. In that instant of absolute terror, with her husband dead beside her and her eldest son mortally wounded, Queen Amélie did something that no one could have predicted. She rose from her seat in the swaying carriage, her wedding pearls catching the light as she moved, still clutching the bouquet of flowers the young girl had given her just minutes before. But instead of cowering or fleeing, she did something extraordinary. She swung that delicate bouquet at Alfredo Costa with all her might, crying out, "Infames, infames, infamous ones!" The contrast was breathtaking. A queen adorned in symbols of legitimacy and grace, transforming the most delicate gift into an instrument of fierce defiance. This wasn't just a desperate act, it was a calculated one. Her brave distraction briefly thwarted the attacker's aim, creating crucial seconds that helped save her youngest son, Prince Manuel, who was hit by only a single bullet that grazed his arm. In those precious moments, royal bodyguards and police officers converged with pistols and swords, killing both assassins on the spot. The image of Queen Amélie fighting assassins with flowers became instantly iconic. Here was a woman who, faced with the unthinkable, refused to be a passive victim. She transformed the most delicate symbol of femininity into an act of raw, visceral courage. It was maternal instinct weaponized, a mother protecting her child with whatever was at hand, no matter how inadequate it might seem. The aftermath of courage. The attack was over in less than a minute, but its consequences would reverberate for generations. 18-year-old Prince Manuel was proclaimed King Manuel II the next day, but the monarchy's foundations had been shattered. The Lisbon regicide had accelerated Portugal's path toward republicanism, creating martyrs for the republican cause while demonstrating the regime's vulnerability. Despite the tragedy, Queen Amélie steadfastly supported her surviving son during his brief, troubled reign. But the regicide had fatally weakened the monarchy's credibility. On October 5, 1910, less than 3 years after that terrible day in the square, Portugal was declared a republic. The 19-year-old King Manuel II was deposed and sent into exile. Queen Amélie, who had already lost so much, now faced her second great exile. She and her son fled to England, settling in Twickenham, the very place where she had been born 45 years earlier. It was a cruel symmetry. The princess born in exile had become a queen in exile, her life coming full circle in the most heartbreaking way. The legacy of resilience. But here's what makes Queen Amelie's story so remarkable. She didn't let tragedy define her. In exile, she maintained her dignity and continued her charitable work. During World War I, she worked for the Red Cross. When World War II erupted and Portugal's government invited her to return for her safety, she famously replied, "In my misfortune, France welcomed me. I will not abandon her in her misfortune." The jewels that had once symbolized her royal status took on new meaning in exile. Those same pearls that had caught the light on that terrible February day became tangible links to happier times. Her faithful diamond scroll brooch continued to accompany her to charitable events, now serving as a reminder of the work she had done and the lives she had touched. In 1945, at age 79, she finally returned to Portugal for a 2-month visit, her first time back in 35 years. Thousands of people lined the streets to see her. She visited the graves of her husband and sons, paid respects at the charitable institutions she had founded, and made a pilgrimage to Fatima. The little girl from exile, who had become Portugal's queen, was welcomed home with love and respect. But here's the most remarkable part of Queen Amelie's story, something that reveals the true power of that moment with the bouquet. When she swung those flowers at an armed assassin, she wasn't just defending her son. She was making a statement about the nature of strength itself. Think about it. In a world where power was measured by armies and wealth, where men settled disputes with guns and swords, a queen chose flowers as her weapon. Not because she was weak, but because she understood something profound about courage. True strength doesn't always come from force. Sometimes it comes from refusing to abandon your principles, even in the face of death. Those flowers represented everything the assassins were trying to destroy: beauty, gentleness, the bonds between people, the simple human gesture of a child offering a gift to a queen. When Amélie wielded them as a weapon, she was saying that these things, these supposedly fragile feminine things, were worth fighting for. They were worth dying for. And in that moment, she transformed not just flowers into a weapon, but weakness into strength, vulnerability into power, and despair into hope. The pearls around her neck, symbols of tears transformed into beauty, seemed to echo this transformation, reminding us that the most precious things often come from the deepest pain. Conclusion. Queen Amélie of Portugal lived for 86 years, witnessing the rise and fall of empires, the transformation of Europe, and the birth of the modern world. But she will forever be remembered for a single moment when, faced with unimaginable violence, she chose to fight back with flowers. Her story reminds us that courage comes in many forms. Sometimes it's the quiet determination to serve others when no one appreciates your efforts. Sometimes it's the strength to maintain your dignity in exile. And sometimes it's the split-second decision to transform a symbol of gentleness into an act of defiance. The bouquet that became a weapon teaches us something profound about the nature of power. In a world that often celebrates force and aggression, Queen Amélie showed us that the most powerful weapons are sometimes the most unexpected ones: love, compassion, and the fierce determination to protect what matters most. She was the last Queen of Portugal, but her legacy transcends any crown or title. She showed us that when everything we hold dear is under attack, we don't need swords or guns to fight back. Sometimes, all we need is the courage to swing our flowers at the darkness and cry out, "Infamous!" to those who would destroy what we love. Queen Amélie's incredible story of courage and resilience continues to inspire us more than a century later. Her transformation of vulnerability into strength reminds us that the most powerful moments in history often come from the most unexpected places. If this remarkable tale of royal bravery moved you, please give this video a like. It truly helps us share these forgotten stories of extraordinary women with more people who will appreciate them. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the fascinating hidden histories behind the world's most captivating royal jewels and the remarkable women who wore them.